Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Angel, you now begin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Juneteenth Justice Jubilee. Freedom Ain't Free, Lunch and Learn. We're excited to have you all here today, and we're excited to have our speakers with us today as well. Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that the Union soldiers landed in Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. This was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. The news arrived later for slaves in Texas, but today the news travels faster than ever before. With that in mind, the Houston Metropolitan Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has gathered some subject matter experts on voting, redistricting, police reform in Houston, and the census to educate us on the news of today. Before we dig in, we will have words from the president of HMAC, Kendra Lacey.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kendra Lacey. I am the president of Houston Metropolitan Alumni Chapter. I am very happy to welcome you all this day on this Juneteenth, which is so special and near and dear to our hearts. And it comes at a time when we are exceptionally motivated as a people, as a culture, and the information that we have to share has been around, but we are now ready and poised to share this information outside of the walls that have always been up. And so we welcome everyone who is on the call. We welcome everyone who is live streaming with us. Go ahead on and share the stream. This information presented by these speakers is going to be imperative for you moving forward as we work to make sure that our voices are heard in this democracy. I'm not going to hold you long, but again, I'd like to welcome you all, and let's look forward to some great information. Thank you all.
Thank you, President Lacey. As I said before, we're pleased to have our speakers here today, and we're just going to go ahead and jump in and get started. So first, we have the Deputy Chief of Staff from the Harris County Clerk's Office, our own Sarah, Tanisha Hudspeth Babaloa. Welcome, Tanisha.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Glad to be on the panel today.
Thank you for being here today. So let's just jump right in. We know that we are a month away from the statewide primary election runoff and about 137 days away from the presidential election. With the impact of COVID-19, what can we expect at the polls?
Very good question. I'm glad we're diving right in, Angel, on this. So first off, the next election that we have before us is the primary runoff elections. The primary took place March 3rd, and the runoff that was previously scheduled for May was pushed by the governor to July 14th, which is traditionally not a month that we typically have an election. And so that is the first off what people need to know, July 14th. So early voting for this period of time begins June 29th and lasts until July 10th. There will be a suspension of days during July 3rd and 4th because of the 4th of July holiday, but there will be 10 days of early voting for this runoff. So any races that were not 50% or plus more of the vote from March went on to July. So essentially there's two elections, the Democratic Party primary runoff and the Republican Party primary runoff. And one of the things our office have done, we've done several things, is this past week we released a message about the SAFE initiative. And we're happy to share this with the chapter. And it's all about voters feeling safe as they choose which type of way they're going to cast their ballot. And once they make that decision, being prepared for that. So one is our office did send applications to ballot by mail for all those voters that were 65 and above. If you were a registered voter, you were 65 and above, our office automatically in Harris County, because I know that there might be other counties here that are listening. For Harris County, we sent applications for all the seniors and those that were 65 and above to vote by mail. So if they receive that application, it would be incumbent upon them to get that filled out and mailed back to us as soon as possible, that so we can get your mail ballot in the mail. And then the second piece is early voting and election day. So there'll be 57 early voting locations and 109 election day locations. All this information can be found on harrisvotes.com on the dates and times and locations. But it's really important that people know we are doing early voting from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. starting June 29th through July 10th. And Sunday will be 10 to 7, which is normally a shorter on a Sunday. And then election day, which is 7 to 7. The last day of early voting, we will be extending hours to 10 p.m. And this is the first time that we've ever done this, but that would be the first step in making sure voting is accessible. The second part is when voters show up to the polling location, if they're choosing to vote in person, they will be provided with PPE. They will see sanitation stands. They will be provided with masks if need be. Now, they are more than welcome to bring any type of protective gear with them, but we will have protective gear for not only our poll workers, but we will have it available for the actual voters themselves. Finger cots and gloves for protection, but we have gone the full length to get all the resources we need from the county for that to be covered. And I'll stop right there because I don't want to go too long.
Thank you, Tanisha. That's vital information. Before you go, will you tell us a little bit about the need for poll workers? We know that poll workers are usually in our high-risk age group for coronavirus. So can you tell us a little bit about the need for poll workers, essentially what they do and where people can apply?
Great question. And I'll still be on. I just don't want to take up too much time. You tell me when we have the questions or not, because I could just go. I get so excited when it comes to talking about voting and accessibility at the poll. But on the note of poll workers, so that is going to be one of the biggest campaigns that we launched this year. We don't want just people to go and vote. We want them to understand how the process works. And so essentially it's a one-day deal where you're working a full day to work the polls and help make sure that every person that comes into the polling location has the opportunity to cast a ballot. So individuals can go to harrisvotes.com to get the information in which we're speaking about now in terms of the July 14th election. But they can also go there to apply to be a poll worker. It's a quick, simple form where you fill out your name and information, and you just basically lay out, do you want to work in an area close to your home? Are you open to driving to different parts of the county? Because as you know, the county is very large. And so we're going to need help in all areas of the county. And so essentially, all you have to do is be a registered voter and 18 years of age to be a poll worker. And we get you placed to work somewhere, and we will need double the amount of poll workers that we typically need in election year, especially as we arrive to November. Now, one other initiative is our high school clerk program. And so we have grown that program over the last course of years, where students only have to be 16 years of age, not even a registered voter, where they can work the polls. And so we make them poll techs. As we know, the people that are 16 years of age, they are really up to speed on iPads and technology and that type of thing. And to run a polling location, we have to use those items. And so they only have to be 16 years of age. They do fill out an application. And if you go to harrisvotes.com, it's called the Student Clerk Program. And it's not just volunteer based. Poll workers and student clerks are paid for doing the work that day. And so that is really good to know. Again, harrisvotes.com or our hotline, 713-755-6965, 713-755-6965. Everything as it relates to this election year, the SAFE initiative that our office has released, and working the polls. So I will also have my information in this drive if there is anyone who is interested.
Thank you, Tanisha. That is vital information. I really encourage everyone who has the time to apply to be a poll worker on election day. It will let you see voting from an entirely different perspective and all the work that goes into making sure that everyone can vote. Up next, we have Houston City Council member Tiffany Thomas. Councilmember Thomas represents District F, which includes the Alief area. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, thank you.
Yes, we're glad to have you with us today. We know that you and other council members made some recommendations to the mayor for police reform as suggested by Campaign Zero with the
Yes.
8 Can't Wait campaign.
Yes.
So will you speak about the executive order that Mayor Turner signed last week?
Sure. So a little background around that. First, thank you. It's good to see some familiar faces. Don't mind any of this stuff in the background. We back here working, okay? This don't exist. So some background around that. It was the 6th death of a Black male Houstonian that really, woke us up because we were receiving calls, in the midst of the pandemic. 6 Black and brown men lost their lives, right? Officer involved. And so we had scheduled, same Black council members scheduled an offline meeting with HPD. And we just had a real frank conversation. We needed to get up to speed. We shared our own experiences. I shared how I was stopped by HPD the night of my campaign candidate forum, and how my heart was beating really fast. And I knew even while having campaign signs and shirts in the backseat of my car that this could go left. And there would be a story, right? She had attitude, she talked too much, all of that. And so we talked to them about our own experiences from that, and based on that conversation, and we asked some real pointed questions about, how many police have you fired, right? How do you assign cops to neighborhoods? We did all of that offline. Around 5 to 7 days later, the death of Houston native George Floyd happens. The globe goes into a spin. So much the narrative in Houston shifted to Minneapolis. But for us, it really said, okay, we have an opportunity to get this straight because now there's a lot of eyes on this. And so from that discussion with HPD, we realized that at our public safety meeting, that committee, that we're required members of, I'm a required member of that committee with my colleagues. We said we're going to route a lot of the issues we're hearing from the community and advocates through that committee. So I want to say a week prior, there were a series of residents that signed up for public comments, and we're talking about the death of Adrian Medarius. And we're talking about police accountability. One of my colleagues met with every single person offline. I met with a few offline, and we gathered some questions. And really the play was, listen, we have this tool to force them to answer us. What do you want to hear? What do you want to know? What information do you need? So we set our agenda based on a community informed, a framework. So the independent review board was already teed up. We've already agreed we're going to restructure that. That was a discussion we had with the mayor and during our budget conversation. We talked about transparency. So some of those recommendations, in addition to the executive order that the mayor adopted, those executive orders, was a public facing dashboard. Because currently, if you go to HPD's website, the general orders on how they operate hasn't been updated since 2015. So when someone asks me, oh, well, what's the disciplinary action? I don't know. Because it's not updated. The way the system is, it's not public facing, it's not informing. You as a resident can't go look at in your zip code, the cops that patrol your area, the number of complaints they've had from residents, or the number of complaints they've had from their peers. So in HPD, there's a 3-to-1 ratio where there's more policemen complaining against policemen than residents complaining against policemen, which I think is important, which shows that there's some level of self-correction there, but we don't know that, right? And so we don't know that that's what the culture is, supposedly. So some of the recommendations with the 8 Can't Wait, the mayor immediately, he said, I read the letter, and based on the letter, I realized, yes, there's some things I could do now. Right. So I don't think we're all in agreement that that wasn't the only thing that we were going to do, but immediately within his power as a mayor form of government, there were some things he can implement. And with the 8 Can't Wait, executive orders, what that does is change their policy immediately. So HPD or the union sent out basically a rebuttal saying, well, we haven't been doing that for 40 years. And that's an accurate statement. It's been their practice. So it's been their practice not to train with chokeholds, but I'm sure there's some folks in Houston that would claim that they've been in a chokehold, right? I'm sure that. There's their practice that they don't do certain things, duty to intervene, but it's never been their policy. So without the policy, you can't track the disciplinary action, right? So with those executive orders, all of that language is now being changed, and then the accountability comes with that. So we know it's a work in progress. Much of what the advocates have been talking about came up in the mayor's transition committee. So the mayor had a criminal justice transition committee, and a lot of those priorities that we're hearing again were coming up. And so I think it's a good opportunity to not just adopt those executive orders, but look at how we deconstruct the system, right? I'm Black and I'm elected, and my Blackness is not separated from me holding an elected seat. HPD will come, but I still get nervous like anyone else, and I'm still concerned, right? That's not separate from us. And so I think to the point of defunding, and I think people have a different definition. They think no more police. They think, oh my God, y'all are just gonna, it's the wild, wild west. And it's not, it's really about, why are we giving so much money to the police department for issues that the police department may not be the best to respond to, right? So when we look at, the sister in Dallas who just needed a wellness check because her door was open and she ended up dead. Did a police officer need to do that, right? No. Now HPD does have a DRT unit, which basically is designed to interface and limit interaction with police. They do everything from homeless checks, and they go look at apartments and bad buildings, code enforcement, and they work around that. So there's a variety of things one can argue. So we're exploring not only the public reforms that we offered, but we are leaning on the task force. People have criticism around that. We don't need another task force. We don't need any of that. We have the recommendations, but we want people to be fully involved in this process so we can be accountable to what the people are saying, not from a council directive, not from a mayor's directive, but we really want this to be community centered, and we are hopeful that a lot of bold things are going to happen in the next 90 days.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. I like that you said that you really want it to be community centered. So can you tell us what actions community members can take?
Sure. So what I want to say early last week, several members sent in recommendations to a variety of council members about what they would like to see. And what we did is we drafted that in a recommendation document. We sent that to HPD, and we had a real deep dive in understanding their current policy, what they have in place, what they don't have in place, what are the recommendations, and what does that mean? And I'll tell you, they're completely willing. So we want people to participate in the full continuum of this conversation, and not just, we're going to vote to get you out. Like, voting is the baseline. Voting is the reasonable service in the Bible. It says, like, that's your reasonable service. That's what you should be doing, right? But when we're talking about the entire public policy piece, we need real involvement because I have never been to jail, right? I don't know. So the people who are formerly incarcerated that have experience with the criminal justice system, we need to hear from them, right? We need to hear from those who are retired law enforcement that can kind of talk about feedback from a different place now. We need all of that, communities, but we also need to understand that public services, public safety is much more than law enforcement. So I chair housing, and I'll beat the drum for housing. But when you look at our Harvey rebuild, most of the challenges is because those Black and brown folks that had 3-bedroom homes, the GLO is only authorizing a 2-bedroom rebuild, right? Which is problematic. So so now you're messing with the entire development and the future and economic base of that neighborhood. No one's talking about that, but that's a form of public safety. The street lights, right? The parks, the blighted buildings, all of those types of things. So it really is true. It's going to take all of us to be involved. So there's 2 immediate opportunities for everyday people to get involved. One, we have a public safety meeting, which will be at 10 a.m. on June 25th. The information's posted on the website. You can Google City Council committees, and you'll see every committee with the accurate information, our agenda, the archives, all of that. Sign up for public comments. The second opportunity would be to sign up for public comments for council meetings. It is sometimes they're long, but it's worth it. And I will tell you, there have been countless numbers of times someone from the community has called in and said something, and it's piqued me like, oh, I've never heard it that way. And so we have to be okay with not having all the answers. And you have to be okay with like, I don't know, you tell me. I'm in a position to help push it. So you tell me what the move is, and then that's what we're going to do. So those are the two. And then, and I'll say thirdly, contact your council member. You have district members and, at-large members, and the space of this vortex is wide right now. And so there's a lot of opportunity. People are willing, they're open, they're listening, they're educating themselves on what the options can be. And I think this will be a perfect opportunity on how political systems and community systems come together to create a real agenda. Because we talk about it, but we ain't never really executed a thing. And so I think this might be the opportunity for us to execute. And then, specifically for, members of Delta Sigma Theta, what a critical time, right? No better time to be a Delta than be a Delta right now. When we have to look at how our social action committees are assigned to these systems, who from the committee is watching Commissioner's Court, who from the committee is watching council, who's watching HISD and all D&ID board meetings, and then who's giving the report, and who's saying, y'all, this is the move, this is getting ready to happen. Because people are talking about the Houston Police Department, but they're also saying no more police in schools, right? You're hearing that conversation too. We need more counselors. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us as a sisterhood in this Houston region to collaborate and really do some good service to this community and to ourselves.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Sarah, as you hear her, I think she called you out. Our initiative is to serve, so we look forward to you getting involved. At the end of this, I will repeat some of the actions that you can take to get involved. And you'll also see it listed in the comments on our Facebook. So thank you so much for being here. Also with us today is Ray Shackelford, the National President of the National Urban League Young Professionals. Ray, we're gonna just keep diving right in. Will you tell us a little bit about what the Urban League is doing with the movement that's going on today?
So yes, thank you, Angel. And definitely wanted to thank the Deltas. I've said it privately. This may be the first time I've said it publicly. I may get in trouble, but I do believe that the Deltas are the best organized sorority or fraternity. It is what it is. And so thank you guys for continuing to lead. And as relates to Tanisha and Tiffany, they both help groom me as relates to community leadership. So with that being said, from a national perspective, we are continuing to push relief as it relates to the HEROES Act. When you're talking about COVID-19 and the coronavirus, we have seen historically and currently that the Black community is always hit harder when you're talking about these different disparities and inequities. The saying goes, when America catches a cold, Black America catches the flu. And so we've seen that definitely is the case. And so making sure that they're getting the adequate relief that they need and pushing that piece of legislation. Also, when you're talking about police reform, and the amount of energy that is going on in the country around that, we're pushing for the Justice and Policing Act. And so President Morial actually just testified on the House floor a couple of days ago as it relates to that piece of legislation and the importance of it as it relates to qualified immunity, a registry, when you're able to track and look at law enforcement. We've seen several times where officers have gotten fired and then gone down the street to work for another agency and continue to do the same things. Also looking at independent prosecution, because at the local level, irrespective of where there is actual corroboration or some type of relationship, there's not the appearance of justice being served. So there needs to be an independent body to make sure that not only there's the appearance of justice, but justice is actually served. But also looking at the language of some of the laws, because we've seen time and time again, that is something that has allowed a number of different offers because of the amount of latitude that they are given in those instances as it relates to decision making. One of the big efforts that I want to make people aware of is our text banking coming up from a young professional perspective on this Tuesday, the 23rd. We do not want to forget about, obviously, our brother here from 3rd Ward, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and especially Breonna Taylor. Her case is not being uplifted enough, and so we are continuing to text and send emails to our congressional and Senate leadership to make sure that they are aware of it, that they are pushing for justice. I saw breaking news that one of the officers was fired. That is not enough. These officers not only need to be fired, but they need to be charged for executing a no-knock warrant and ultimately taking the life of that young woman when they weren't even supposed to be at that address. And so these are some of the things we're doing from a national perspective. Here in Houston, speaking on behalf of our CEO, Judson Robinson III, we're continuing to provide relief and support to the community through our programmatic efforts. We are talking about housing, helping people to navigate different resources as it relates to legal assistance for those that don't have the ability to pay their rent as those moratoriums begin to fall away, but also as it relates to doing food distributions within the community, giving them masks, food, books, as it relates to making sure the kids are continuing to read and have that literacy, and even holding sessions with parents and students to educate them on the importance of reading and how they continue to educate themselves virtually, even at home, but also fighting for access as it relates to those that don't have internet or the capacity to do so, because we know the digital divide is a very real thing. When you're talking about Black communities, communities of color, they don't have the access. And so we can't expect to all of a sudden shift the education system to a virtual world and everybody is not equipped to engage in that capacity. So these are some of the things we're doing. That's not an exhaustive list, but we continue to be one of the organizations that helps to push forward the agenda of the community and the people who typically do not have a voice.
Thank you, Ray. We appreciate that. Look, just tell us, how do we, I mean, you guys are doing a lot of things in the community and a lot of different programs. And although people may have forgotten, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. So we appreciate that the Urban League is still concentrating on bringing relief to our communities in that effort. But how can we get involved with the National Urban League?
So yes, there is a number of different ways to get engaged and involved. We have been inundated, like many entities, with calls of people that want to get engaged. So for those that want to volunteer, we can plug you in to the Guild or to the young professionals here locally. Nationally, we can do that as well. I know Soror Carolyn, she's going to drop those links for both the national and local organizations so people can plug in. You can also reach out to me directly on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I will respond. But I also want to encourage people, because we do work with the Harris County Clerk's Office as relates to Tanisha. We do work with the Census Bureau. I know you're going to hear from Jania here shortly. But things that you can do right now is make sure that you are registered to vote. It's too late to get registered for the upcoming runoff that'll take place on July 14th, but it is not too late to get registered for the upcoming general election. This is a very important election. You know, we always say that our lives depend on it, but the reality is that every election, our lives depend on it, because when you don't use your vote, you are making yourself voiceless and allowing other people to speak on your behalf. So make sure that you are registered. When we're able to do so, get deputized. We're communicating with the county registrar's office to get some type of virtual training going. There was one done by the Democratic Party as relates to Travis County, and people are getting recertified or in the process of getting recertified. But also, if you have a group that wants to participate in voter registration, I've had an outpouring of Black-owned businesses that are calling me. I don't want to tell you the names because I want to make it a surprise, but we'll be rolling out several efforts where these business owners are actually not only providing deals, but giving away food in some instances just to make sure that people are registered. So people are very energized, going to great lengths to make sure that we make some type of progress. So if you have a business, you want to engage in voter registration, reach out to us. We can help you get that set up. If you want us to do a presentation to help educate your civic club, we've done that as well. The census is something that we need to make sure people complete. I don't want to go too much in detail because I know, again, Jania is going to talk at length about it, but please do that, my2020census.gov. And for those brothers and sisters in corporate America, we've also been working with them as it relates to talking to their companies about measures that they can take as it relates to their leadership, their board representation, their pipeline to leadership, their compensation of employees, the manner in which they contract vendors. All of these things matter as it relates to including Black people, communities of color, women, and making sure that they are adequately represented at all these different levels. So if you have a corporation, you don't know how to carry those conversations, that is something we can help you with as well.
Can I add one thing to his ask list? Well, we also will accept your money. So we have to understand that this type of movement needs to be funded. So yes, we want you to come and vote, but we also don't want you to donate $25 because activists need to be taken care of, the free water that you take down the street, the food for those poll workers, all that supports the movement. And if we're going to do that, we do need funds because some of y'all not coming down to protest, and that's fine too. Some of y'all not going to work the poll, and that's all right. But some of you do have the ability to fund it. And so we have to look at all options to make sure that the changes that we want, we have the funds to continue to meet the goal. So if you're in a particular place or you're in a place of influence, a corporate foundation to underwrite training, you personally have finances to do so, please consider donating to all of the organizations that have foundations and 501c3 statuses.
Yes, that is
So Councilmember Thomas is exactly right. And Tanisha, I know you have one more comment because Ray tried to cover everybody's subject. So Tanisha, go ahead.
Just one last thing. It's become apparent to me in the course of the last couple of weeks, there's a rumor going around that if you didn't vote in the primary and you're not registered and you didn't vote in the primary, that you won't be able to vote in November. And so please monitor misinformation, because typically in a presidential year, there's all these different campaigns to try to diminish people getting out to vote, scare people of getting out to vote, all these different tactics. And so that is why I gave the Harris Votes website on there. Even if you're not in Harris County, the Texas election code laws are the same across the board. And so if you're not registered, you have until October, the 1st of October, to get registered, but we encourage you to go ahead and get it done today. So the rumor about I didn't vote in the primary, does that mean I won't be voting? I can't vote in November? That is not true. Registration for every election is 30 days prior to that election. If you're already a registered voter, there's no need to go re-register. And so that's another rumor that I'm hearing too. You have to re-register for every election. That is misinformation. Please check your sources and make sure that you're getting the correct information, because there's an outright campaign and attack on voting this year. And so people need to be mindful of the information that they're getting.
That's correct. Thank you so much, Tanisha. And thank you, Ray. I think this Justice Jubilee is a great example of the different lanes that you can take with the same common goal of, bringing real, true freedom to our community. So up next, we have Jania Henderson, who is a partnership specialist with the Census Bureau. We've been having a lot going on this year, but we do not want to forget that it is a census year. So Ms. Henderson, can you tell us why is it important for our community, the Black community, to complete the census?
I'll be brief. $675 billion. It's money. It is SNAP. It is, Medicaid. It is, child care. We've spent the entire year talking to our community. It's strange that, people who have completed censuses prior to this, they've forgotten about the census. So one thing at the Census Bureau we're doing now is hopefully we will have a program where we will continue to, keep the census in the forefront instead of talking about it every 10 years. I do want to talk about our collegiate students, how we want them to know and the parents to know that throughout COVID-19, those funds, where they go to school at, they need to be counted there. I'll give you an example as far as Prairie View goes. My daughter attends Prairie View. She came home for COVID-19. April 1st is still Census Day. So since she was at Prairie View on April the 1st, regardless of her coming home because of COVID-19, that's where she's going to be counted at. We have a lot of collegiate students that, of course, left for school and they returned home to their parents' house, but they still had an apartment or a private house, in Prairie View. They still need to be counted there. Those funds are for the city of Prairie View. African-American men. I spoke with some brothers from Alpha Phi Alpha this week, and we're going to try to do a census barber challenge where Black men who bring their sons in or who come in themselves, if they can show proof that they've completed their census form, you're going to get a discounted haircut. So we're working on that. My thing with the census is that when you have single moms and you have single dads, a single dad, that's his, he will create his own, fill out his own census form, sorry. And so I think that is why most Black men are undercounted, because most of the children actually live with their mom. So the mom is counted there. And we also are doubling back to talk to our single moms to count their children as well. So I think personally, when we talk about funding, we talk about, undercount of Black men and women and children and collegiate students and the homeless count. If they're better educated, we can become the third largest city in the nation. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I don't know why. But but it's the funding. It is the funding. We are pushing our Check Black campaign. A lot of people, because they are mixed race, they don't check Black. But if you are 51% Black, we ask that you check Black, because that hones in our undercount.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. That's important information. I had not even thought about the Black fathers who were not counting their children, and that initiative to have proof of you completing the census and getting a discount haircut is a great initiative. So thank you so much for bringing us up to date and telling us the importance of why we need to complete the census. And if for one more time, I know Ray gave it to us, but one more time, Jania, can you give us the website where you can go and complete your census?
Sure, it's www.census.gov. And also too, we have short codes that whenever we're out doing, participating in car parades, we're at food distribution centers, we're at the COVID testing spots, we're at voter registration, to continue to practice social distancing, we can text a code. If you're assisting with someone, you can text a short code to 313131. And you text I count 2020 to that code. The person that you're assisting to complete their questionnaire, that census questionnaire will pop up on their phone. So you don't have to touch their phone, they don't have to touch yours.
All right, thank you so much. The census information ties in perfectly with the topic our last and final speaker will be discussing. Please welcome Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. He represents House District 27 in the Fort Bend County area. Rep Reynolds, we're so glad to have you here with us today. Will you shed more light on why we should be paying attention to redistricting and how the census affects that? We can't hear you.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. Absolutely. I want to first of all thank the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. You all are doing a phenomenal job, and I echo the sentiments that have already been laid out. And I'm happy as I tie in and follow up to Jania that she's partnering with my frat brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, Ray, to get that done. But the reason why it's so important is because when we go back and start the 87th legislative session, the way that we tackle redistricting, we do it every 10 years, is based on the census numbers. So if you want representation for your state representatives, for your congressional districts, then you have to fill out that census, because when we draw the lines, it's based on population. And we can stand to gain congressional districts, state representative districts based upon population. And Jania is right. African Americans and Hispanics have traditionally been underrepresented. And I'm going to be very transparent today. The state of Texas and our leadership, this shouldn't be partisan, but I'm going to be very honest and frank with everybody. The Republicans had an opportunity to give money from the state so that Texans can be counted. Guess what? They decided that we wouldn't allow those resources. So we're losing billions of dollars potentially from being underrepresented. And so it's incumbent upon us as a community to make sure that our brothers and sisters are counted so that we can be represented. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues don't want to see us represented because when we are, that means that there may be different people who are able to be elected because again, those lines are drawn based upon those census numbers.
Right. That's so important. So important. So can you once again, this is the Houston Metropolitan Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority hosting this Justice Jubilee Lunch and Learn Freedom Ain't Free, giving you information from different areas on how you can affect change in your community. So with affecting change, we have State Representative Ron Reynolds. Ron, can you tell us why we should be paying attention to the next legislative session?
Wow, I could give you a mouthful, but I'm gonna be very concise. Elections have consequences, and I want to encourage everyone to vote, like it's been stated before. But this next legislative session is going to be pivotal. If you don't want George Floyd's death to be in vain, and I know no one does, and you want to see meaningful criminal justice reforms, you want to see meaningful policing reforms at the state level, if you care about equal pay for equal work, if you care about a livable wage of $15 an hour, if you care about Medicaid expansion in Texas, if you care about so many of the things that we care about, progressive values, then the next legislative session is going to be pivotal. That's when we will do the laws for the state of Texas. Now, Congress has a chance to enact legislation now, but Texas, for those who don't know, only meets every 2 years unless the governor calls a special session. So the next legislative session starts in January of 2021. That's where we will meet for 140 days to shape the laws for the state of Texas for the next 2 years and the budget. So it's critical that we have great representatives at the state level, at the state Senate level, at the congressional level to make sure that they are enacting the laws that people are in the street protesting about, marching about. We're Tiffany Thomas, city council is working on different things, but unless we give them at the state level, for example, a legislative bill to get a civilian review board with subpoena power, they won't be able to effectuate it. So unless we enact these laws at the state level, so that we cannot have these police officers, whenever they have these bad police records, they go from one jurisdiction to another. We can pass a state law to change all that. We can change the laws in this state so that unarmed Black men won't be likely to be killed. So I'm very eager to get back to work, and I want to encourage everyone to make your voices heard. Call your state representative, tell them what things that you are concerned about so that we can get some very meaningful reforms done next legislative session. Elections have consequences.
Right. So I know that even when we're not in a legislative session, you are hard at work for your community and your constituents. And I know there was a request to the governor for more research into why the Black community is so disproportionately hit by COVID-19. Can you tell us more about what your request was and where that stands?
Absolutely. So my colleagues and I, with the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, we submitted a letter. Representative Theory drafted the letter. We all signed off on it, requesting that the governor establish a task force to study the disparate impact that COVID-19, the coronavirus, is having among the African American community. I'm just going to be real with you guys. The governor said that he would do it. But so far it's just been lip service. We haven't seen anything come out of it yet. We're continuing to have conversation and dialogue with the governor about it. Just like Hurricane Harvey, the governor was Johnny on the spot, and thankfully so. We need to have that same sense of urgency when it comes to COVID-19, because unfortunately our community, the African American community, people of color, are being hit the hardest when it comes to those who are getting this pandemic and those who are dying. And so I think it's vitally important that the governor does that so that we can find solutions and ways to minimize the risk that African Americans are having. We're going to continue to speak truth to power, call the governor out, and hopefully Governor Abbott will make sure that those resources are there to protect our communities. And I want to encourage everyone, as was stated earlier, to remember that this pandemic has not went away, to continuing to wear facial masks. I don't care what Donald Trump says. We know what Dr. Fauci says. We know what science says. Continue to wear those facial coverings, continue to practice social distancing, continue to use good hygiene. It's so important. We don't want to see a spike. We have not flattened the curve, and we're close to seeing a second, really a big impact. And we don't want to see that in the state of Texas, because it definitely is impacting people of color the most.
So how can community members help you to have the governor, complete this request, or at least acknowledge the request?
I'm so glad you asked that. What I encourage everyone to do, the governor represents all of us, no matter if you voted for him or not. He represents Texas. So I encourage you to call his office, to flood his office with emails, to make sure that you're telling the governor that this is an important issue, and you want him to address it. And I think that the more people of good conscience that are calling in, the more it rises to the level of his radar. And that is more than likely where he'll address it. There's 19 members of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, so we don't have the big numbers. Republicans are in power, but we know that when people use their platforms, when people march, and when people protest, things happen. And so everyone that is listening today, they can call, they can write, they can email, they can use their voice to make sure that the governor takes our issues, make them a priority. And that's what I encourage people to do. They don't have to wait till the next legislative session, as you stated. They can do that today, because many of the most important work that we do is during the interim. This is where we prepare for the next legislative session. And the members of the TLBC has even called the governor to call a special session so that we can pass some meaningful legislation that we don't have to wait until January to do, but the governor's indicated that he's not likely to do that. So I encourage everyone to call, to write, and to make sure that you're holding the governor and the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, accountable.
Thank you, Representative Reynolds. Also very important. I mean, there are many ways to take actions. All of our guests here today have given many ways for you to take action. So if you're not comfortable text banking with the National Urban League, you can call the governor and ask him to put together the coronavirus task force. If you're not comfortable with that, you can sign on to have public comments at our city council, as Councilmember Tiffany Thomas told us. And if that is still uncomfortable for you, you can just text 313131 I count 2020 and make sure you complete the census and do your part. And also don't forget to get registered to vote. We have about 10 minutes left, so I know I went through that really fast, but I'm going to give each of our speakers 1 minute to just give their website and contact information again to those who are listening. And we'll just start off with Ray of the National Urban League. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Angel. We can be reached nationally. Our websites are nul.org and nulyp.org. Locally, you have haulyp.org and haul.org. If you're here in the Houston area, you can call 713-393-8700. And you can email me at rshackleford@haul.org. And at each of those websites, as Councilwoman Thomas, a longtime urban leaguer, stated, you can provide contributions, donations. We do need your help in that respect to do the work that we have been doing and will continue to do on behalf of the community.
Thank you, Ray. Jania?
Sure. The email address is www.census.gov. My email address is johnia.henderson@2020census.gov. My government phone number is 832-666-9870. Also, I wanted to add that whenever you all are doing food distributions and COVID testing sites and voter registration sites, feel free to call me. invite me. Our recruiters that were hired with the census are now CRRs. And so they are the ones that if we just mobilize all across Harris County. So if you're having events, please let me know. Ron, I'll actually see you this evening.
Councilmember Thomas.
Sure. So thank you again for the invitation, Houston Metropolitan Alumni Chapter. Always my pleasure to be amongst good sorors and good people on the panel. I've known many of them. Shout out to to my frack, Tanisha. So my information, I don't know my government number, so I can't give y'all that because I don't know it. But you can email me at districtf@houstontx.gov. I do check my email, the phone, I answer all of that. Or if you want to email me directly, you can do that too. And no one checks that email but me. It's tiffany.d.thomas@houstontx.gov. And most sorors have my cell number, so like that's fine. Y'all could just text me. But I would like to, just implore sorors and our chapters that this is an opportunity for us to really collaborate. No one does it better than Houston, I argue. So we can really affect some change. We have the most Black women and Black people elected to city council. And there are some things that are important to Delta that can influence the city. And so please allow me to support you as we move forward collectively, and allow me to use my seat to help y'all advocate for the things that are important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Tanisha from the County Clerk's Office.
Yes, so I am actively posting things in the chat, the Zoom chat at the bottom, so that people can see. Again, Tanisha Hudspeth, I put my personal email in there, thudspeth@cco.hctx.net. But essentially everything around the elections you can find at harrisvotes.com. You can also follow us at Facebook and Twitter at Harris Votes. I'm so happy to be and honored to be activating with these people on the panel. I've worked with each and every one of them in some capacity. Ron, I know I owe you a phone call. And so again, this year will be one of the most important elections. It will be historic that we will have an opportunity to vote in. And with all that's going on, if for no other reason, we should see why we have to be at the polls this year and make sure that our voices are heard. And so the information is there. You can always text as well. And I know the rumors are going to start about elections, and I get text message and calls all the time. I just want to make sure this is true. This is what I heard. And so let me be a resource for that as we move forward in the voting process. So thank you. And thank you to my HMAC proud chapter. I love my sorors in my chapter. Love you all.
Love you too. Thank you so much for that information. And Rep Reynolds, really quickly, if you have any contact information that you'd like to share as well. You're on mute.
My office number is 281-208-3574. 281-208-3574. My email address is ron.reynolds@house.texas.gov.
Thank you. Thank you all again to all of our speakers. Before we wrap up, we are honored to have with us on the call Ms. Jacqueline W. Bostic, a SARA of Houston Metropolitan Alumni Chapter. She is one of the past presidents and the great granddaughter of Reverend John Henry Jack Yates, and an icon in her own right. So Sarah Bostic, we would love for you to have final words as we close.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It has been a wonderful panel discussion and so much great information that everyone can use. As you're aware, this is the 155th year since the full emancipation of slaves in Texas, but actually slaves throughout the United States. And it's so important that we understand that we are actually Juneteenth. And as being a part of Juneteenth and the legacy and the history, we must continue to share that information with all Americans. We must be empowered by understanding who we are and the fact that our history is a history of brilliant, wonderful people that have made great contributions to this country and continue to make great contributions to this country. But we can only do that if we understand our history, if we make sure that we get it right, and we continue to encourage and to motivate our children and our young people to be and do the best that they can. And then we can move forward. But we must know and be a part of the community. We must ensure that we work in the community. And HMAC has truly done that through the years and will continue to do that. And so I say thank you, my Saras. I love each and every one of you.
And Sarah Bostic taught me everything I know, by the way.
Thank you, Sarah Bostic. And once again, y'all, we thank you for joining us today for our Justice Jubilee. Freedom is not free, okay? And as we say in the Black community, freedom ain't free. You must take action. There's been lots shared with you here today. And so we hope that you would go through the comments on Facebook and connect with all of these wonderful folks who are doing this work in and for our community. And it's Juneteenth, y'all. So enjoy your Juneteenth. Thank you. Bye-bye.